All right, everybody, what is going on? Good morning. Happy Thursday. Hope you guys are doing well. We are early in the month of July here. July may be the slowest month of the year for NFL football stuff. So I thought that in light of the fact that there isn't necessarily going to be a lot that goes on this month, it would be a good month to ask some more speculative and internal questions about this team. So here we are on July 2nd. We are about 5 weeks away from the start of the preseason. We are about 2 months away from the start of the regular season. And I want to know what you guys think about this because this has been something that has come up a lot this offseason. This video is sponsored by Prize Picks. Basically, just in general, if you are watching this video and you are a fan of the Seattle Seahawks, you are a fan of the team that just won the Super Bowl. And usually there's some stuff that comes with winning the Super Bowl. And some of the stuff is concrete. Some of the stuff is not really, it's not something that can be taken away. It's not something that can be removed. It's not something that is up for debate. But there's also stuff that can kind of come and go. Like, for instance, respect. And one narrative that has popped up a lot with not just Seattle fans, but other people, outside people, fans of other teams, and even analysts like Kevin Clark of ESPN here, talking about how the Seahawks are being very disrespected right now. And quite simply, I want to ask in this video, do you feel like the Seahawks are being disrespected going into 2026? And the thing to understand is, this isn't a team that fluked their way to the Super Bowl, right? This is not a team that won 10 games last year, got into the playoffs, and then got hot. This isn't a team that won a terrible division and just got hot. This is a team that won 14 games, that won the last 10 games they played total, including the last 7 regular season games. This is a team that lost the 3 games they lost by a combined 9 points. This is a team that won their 3 playoff games, blowout, close game that they led basically the whole way anyway, and then pseudo blowout. This is a team that won games by 3 touchdowns or more several times last year. So this was a pretty legitimate Super Bowl champion. And yet, is there a lack of respect? This is not the 2011 Giants, right? The 2011 Giants went 9-7, had a negative point differential, made the playoffs because their division was terrible, and then got hot in the postseason and ran their way through. This wasn't that. This wasn't even like the 2020 Buccaneers. The 2020 Buccaneers lost the division, and they were pretty darn fortunate to get Drew Brees when he had no gas left in the tank, because that Saints team that they played in the second round, in the divisional round, had proven they were a better team than the Buccaneers that season, but Drew Brees had no gas left in the tank for that game. So that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a team that was pretty dominant all season long, dominant in the postseason, and was the number 1 seed. So why is it like this, if it is like this at all? If you like sports, then the best way to make them even better and more exciting is using the Prize Picks app, where it always feels good to be right. Prize Picks makes daily fantasy simple. Just pick more or less on your favorite players and build lineups with a few taps. Whatever sport you're into, and obviously we are now firmly into the NFL offseason, so we're all about baseball, we got some basketball, we got some hockey, whatever it is you like, Prize Picks gives you a fun way to stay locked in while you're watching. Definitely make sure to use the promo code HMA. Prize Picks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. If you use that promo code, that is HMA. I've had a great time on Prize Picks so far, so definitely get on over to it, check it out, and make sure to get your lineups. And don't forget about Team Picks, where you can pick winners, spreads, and totals on any major game. So download the app now, use HMA, and get on over to Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And remember, always gamble responsibly. And I guess that's the first question. That's the first thing I'd like to hear from you guys. Do you feel like this team is getting disrespected? Because that's been an undercurrent this entire offseason. And Kevin Clark was able to kind of sum it up on ESPN a few days ago, talking about how normally I would laugh at a nobody believes in us, I have a chip on my shoulder gimmick from a Super Bowl champion. But in this case, it is incredibly valid. The Seahawks are on the short list for most disrespected Super Bowl champions of my lifetime. And this is a sentiment that goes back months. I'm not going to go through every time the Seahawks may or may not have been slighted by an analyst or a fan of another team over the last several months, because either you've seen it or you haven't. But there has been a sense that this Seahawks team is not getting treated the way a typical defending champion is treated. And you have the way the season went last year, which is one thing. I understand that, right? But there's another way to look at it, where some people would say, well, yeah, you guys were champions last year, but that doesn't mean you're going to be good this year. And look at everything that you lost in the offseason. That's kind of been the conversation. And I think where it comes from, there's a few different things at play, because I want to be clear about something. Yeah, I do think this Seattle team is not being discussed the way they should be discussed coming off such a good season. Again, this was not a fluke Super Bowl run after a mediocre regular season. This was 14-3, number one seed in the best division in football, and then you somewhat stomped your way through the postseason. Not every game was a blowout, but it was a pretty definitive postseason run overall. And I do feel like that's getting passed over. So, number one reason I think is that people didn't expect it. And when it happened, rather than just trying to figure it out, they're naturally inclined to assume it was kind of just random BS that doesn't make sense. Like, a lot of people thought that Sam Darnold just wasn't ever going to be a guy who could win a Super Bowl. So when he did, it became more like, well, that must just be random crap. That must be like Trent Dilfer winning a Super Bowl. That must be like well, I don't want to throw Brad Johnson in there, because Brad Johnson was really good that year, but the Giants backup quarterback all those years ago, Hostetler, I think his name was. I may have mispronounced that, but they look at stuff like that and they go, well, that doesn't make sense to me, so I'm not really going to take it that seriously that it happened. A lot of people look at JSN and they see a guy who can't possibly be the best receiver in football because he's not that tall or he's not that fast or whatever. So when JSN has one of the greatest seasons any wide receiver has ever had in the history of the NFL, it confuses them. So they don't really seek to understand what they got wrong. They just kind of think, well, it was just kind of a fluky thing. I think there's some of that going on here too. So I'm not saying that it all comes from a genuine place. I think that there is some degree of just looking at it and going, this team didn't have a superstar edge rusher. So how could they win the Super Bowl? This team, their number 2 receiver was washed up Cooper Kupp. So basically just this general sense that it doesn't make sense that the Seahawks team was so good. So because it doesn't make sense to me, I'm not going to take it that seriously. I think that is a piece of this, but there's another thing going on here too, and this is kind of like getting your thunder stolen a little bit. You look at the other great teams from last year, the other teams that were the best teams in the league, right? So you have the Seahawks who won the Super Bowl. You have the Patriots. What did the Patriots do this offseason? They got A.J. Brown, right? What did they lose? Not much. Chison, maybe. Maybe they'll miss Chison. The Rams. What did the Rams do this offseason? They got Trent McDuffie. They got Myles Garrett. What did they lose? I mean, Kobe Durant. My bad. Kobe Durant and Jared Verse, but they upgraded from both those players. What did the Broncos do? The Broncos probably should have been in the Super Bowl last year. Broncos traded for Jalen Waddle. What did the Broncos team lose? John Franklin Myers? Okay, I mean, that's not nothing, but it feels like those teams, those other teams that were close, got better. It feels like those teams improved. Even, maybe a team like Houston didn't necessarily improve with the players they acquired, but maybe they can get some of their guys healthy this year and it'll be like they added players. You could throw some other teams in there as well, I guess. I'd say the Bears look like they may have regressed because they lost Dahlman. But even a team like the Bears, I mean, they got Kobe Bryant on that defense, and the defense was the area of the team that really needed some help. The 49ers, you could throw them in there. They got Mike Evans. So all these other teams that were really good last year, or at the very least, teams that made it some distance in the postseason, seems like they all got better and they all added big pieces. Like guys like AJ Brown, Jalen Waddle, Myles Garrett, Trent McDuffie. These are guys who are perceived to be some of the better players in the league. Who did the Seahawks add? Dante Fowler, right? Um, Emmanuel Wilson. Other than that, it's mostly just rookies, right? Like the one really big impact free agent they added, the one veteran they added so far that is likely to be an important piece is Fowler. Like that's a guy who could be an upgrade over what we had last year with Mafe. But look at what we lost because those teams I just mentioned, most of them didn't lose a ton in the offseason. The Seahawks did lose Walker, Bryant, Woolen, and Mafe. And none of those guys are all pros. None of those guys are hyper elite players. In fact, those of those four players, the only guy who's made the Pro Bowl, I believe, is Woolen. And Woolen made the Pro Bowl years ago. He's doesn't seem like the same player now. So it's one of those things where even if the losses individually are not that bad, there's still losses that other teams don't have. Right? Like again, going back to the Rams. The Rams lost Kobe Durant and they lost Jared Verse, but they upgraded from those two guys. We lost Kobe Bryant and we replaced him with Rodney Thomas and Bud Clark. Neither of those guys are going to be upgrades on him now, right now. Maybe Fowler's an upgrade on Mafe. I think he probably is. But Emmanuel Wilson and Jadarian Price is not an upgrade over Ken Walker and Charbonnet. Charbonnet is another part of this conversation because he's going to be hurt. He's going to miss a decent chunk of the season. So you put that out there, it makes a little bit of sense why the Seahawks are not getting a lot of attention right now. But Nemhauser had this tweet the other day that I thought was pretty illuminating. The Seahawks actually have lost way less than the typical recent Super Bowl champion. According to Pro Football Focus, since 2010, the only team to lose a lower percentage of their snaps from that Super Bowl season is Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay in 2020 only lost 3.75% of their snaps. They lost basically nothing. They ran it back about purely as you can, but the Seahawks are right there with 12.33% approximately. Green Bay is 16, a little under 17%. And then everybody else lost at least 21%. And you can see a correlation here between the teams that were really good the next year and the teams that weren't, for the most part, right? Like Tampa Bay was better in 2021 than 2020, and then they lost in the playoffs, but they were a better regular season team. Green Bay went 15-1 and then lost in the postseason. Kansas City went back to the Super Bowl both of these years. Philadelphia was pretty good the next year. They had a lot of injuries, but they still won a playoff game. And then you get down to like the bottom of the list here. These are some of the Super Bowl champions that didn't do very well next year. The Broncos that won, the Ravens team that won, the Rams. Remember, they had a terrible year the next year. So there is correlation here between teams that don't lose that much from their Super Bowl winning squads and teams that do very well, sometimes even on some level, at least regular season wise, better the following year. I think all these teams in the top 5, I want to say, were better in the regular season the next year than they were the year they won the title. Some of them didn't repeat, of course, but in fact, I actually don't think any of these teams repeated. We haven't had not a lot of repeat champions lately, but I think you guys get the point I'm trying to make here. So we lost some players, and losing on some level, your top 2 running backs is tragic. We didn't lose that much. So when you filter things through this lens, it doesn't make as much sense, right? Yeah, other teams added in a way that the Seahawks did not. But the Seahawks didn't need to add. Again, all the evidence indicates they were a phenomenal team last year. They weren't just the team that won the Super Bowl. They were the best team in the league for most of the season. They were the team that was, I know they weren't the 1 seed from the start to the finish, but they were relatively close to that in my mind. Like they started 3-2, and then after that 3-2 start, which by the way was not even that bad of a start, they lost 2 very close games to San Fran and Tampa Bay when Tampa Bay was playing really well early in the season. Um, they they went on a run that was, I mean, I don't want to call it historic, but it's about as dominant as an NFL team in the modern day is going to be. So when you consider that combined with the fact that they're not losing a lot of stuff from last year. They are losing some crucial stuff. There are going to be downgrades, and losing your top 2 running backs because Charbonnet, who knows what Charbonnet is going to be this year, is tragic, but those are not great players that we lost. They're good players. They helped us win, but you can't tell me that Kobe Bryant's an elite safety. You can't tell me that Boye Mafe's an elite edge, right? This isn't like the Chiefs losing a bunch of guys on their offensive line in some of the years after their Super Bowl championships, excuse me. So, yeah, I think that there is a little bit of Seattle Seahawk disrespect. Nobody believes in this team's ability to repeat nationally, and it's kind of unfounded. Based on the numbers, this team should be very, very good again. History's on their side. The math is on their side. The core pieces of this team, other than Walker, are still here. And Walker was not an elite player. He was just the guy who caught fire in the postseason, and because in part because he was the guy that we had. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the whole we're not getting respected, nobody believes in us thing, because at the end of the day it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is winning and losing. But I do think that yeah, there's a clear oversight here. There's some stuff missing with the way in which people perceive this Seattle team coming off a pretty dominant season. So let me know what you guys think. Just wanted to go ahead and go over this as much as I could. And I guess they're going to have to learn the hard way. And hopefully we can teach them the hard way this upcoming season. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. More stuff soon.